Jr. has seen an uncharacteristic amount of drops. I want to say he had 2 just in the game against Seattle. And this is a guy that's known for his hands, the one-handed catches and everything.
Right.
I don't wonder if he should just start trying to catch everything one-handed instead of trying to use both hands, because the amount of balls that have hit his hand from Baker Mayfield that he has not caught over the last few weeks has simply been staggering. And I don't know if that's just the prima donna, everything going to his head, can't seem to figure it out, trying too hard. I don't know what it is, but just what I've been seeing, the only salvageable, especially in terms of fantasy right now, I think that Odell Beckham Jr. is still an okay fantasy asset to have. Looking real quick, I believe he is, let's see, where is he at? He is wide receiver number 23 overall in half-point PPR. So not great especially when guys were using their late first, early second round pick on him. Not exactly what you were looking for. That being said, he's still usable. I think still the best fantasy option in Cleveland is by far Nick Chubb, who has been an absolute beast. I was so happy to get him in a couple of my leagues. Right now, he is the running back number 3. He's only on the season. He's only about 8 points behind Dalvin Cook. He happens to be about 45 points behind Christian McCaffrey, but everyone's way behind Christian McCaffrey. Not even quarterbacks are scoring as many points as he is right now.
Right. So, yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? So let's talk about the Myles Garrett. I know there was a situation that off the field situation that he was involved in. Do you have any information about that?
I don't, about the Myles Garrett issue. I have not. I've seen it mentioned. I have not dug very deep into it yet, though.
Okay, and then let's talk about Jalen Ramsey. How can I get off a guy that I have seen play all too many times? Now that the trade is sunk in, you've had 24 hours to think about it. Okay, I think the Jaguars' defense played pretty decent against New Orleans when I was up there on Sunday, and I'm just wondering what kind of an impact he'll have with the Rams' defense.
I think that he could provide a little bit of a spark for this Rams defense. I'm pulling up. I'm making sure that I've got both the Jaguars and the Rams defense, kind of their remaining schedule up at the same time here. I think that he is definitely going to help the Rams, considering that they traded away Marcus Peters, who Marcus Peters was very much a guess which way the ball's going to go type of guy from the beginning of his career. In Kansas City, where he guessed very well his first year in Kansas City. But if you remember, he may have led the league in interceptions, but at the same time, he also led the league in deep balls given up.
Right.
And so I think that he is that Ramsey is going to help out in that aspect. I know that the Rams also put Aqib Talib on IR.
Right.
He is able to return, as far as I remember. I believe he is able to return. So, but looking at what Ramsey is going to be able to do for the Rams defense, it's definitely interesting if you consider that the Rams play in a division that doesn't have a true number one outside wide receiver.
Right.
You look at the top receivers in the NFC West, and 3 of them are on the Rams, in Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, and Robert Woods.
Right.
Are they going to have Jalen Ramsey play in the slot in order to guard Tyler Lockett? Are they going to have him? I mean, who does he need to cover for the San Francisco 49ers?
Right.
Theirs is a whole big mishmash of who's gonna get the ball this week, or are they gonna have Jalen Ramsey just cover George Kittle? And then you look at Arizona. The best receiver out of Arizona, other than Larry Fitzgerald, is David Johnson out of the backfield. So while I understand that they needed to make a move, and they're kind of in panic mode after starting off 3-0 and then losing their next 3 games.
Right.
I think he'll help out this next week. If Ramsey is available, who knows if his back issue will suddenly disappear, and he'll be fine to go this next week against Atlanta and have him going up against Julio Jones. But I mean, if you look at the rest of his schedule, he doesn't have a whole. I mean, there are a couple of guys that will really Ramsey's really going to help out against. I mean, look at the remaining schedule. And if he plays next week against Atlanta, he'll have Julio Jones. Against Cincinnati, there's really no one that he's really going to help them with. Maybe, I mean, between Tyler Boyd and Auden Tate, who's he going to cover? Sorry, were you saying?
Yeah, I'm going to compliment you on something right here about Ramsey. Back issues suddenly disappear. My goodness, even David Copperfield couldn't have dreamed up one like that.
I honestly think that part of his quote-unquote back issues were the fact that he didn't want to play.
Yeah.
I know that I saw a tweet out today that one of the points of friction for Jalen Ramsey was how much he was having to play zone defense. Right. The Jaguars so far this year, their defensive backfield has played zone defense on 66% of all their defensive snaps, which is the fourth highest in the league. I think one of the few teams that's actually above that is the Seattle Seahawks, who always play a zone. Right. And so I think that let's just put it this way: I would not be surprised if Jalen Ramsey is suddenly very, very healthy and can play this next Sunday against Atlanta.
Oh, I was complimenting him. By the way, in reference to a procedure I had to deal with a little over 2 months ago, it's called a neck operation. I think that Jalen Ramsey was more of a pain in the neck. Okay. So that's just what I want to throw in. And I'll mention this here. We got another couple more minutes that we can go with this, okay? And tell me what you think about this. Tom Coughlin did the biggest fleece job I've ever seen on an organization that you ever need to get 2 number ones and a 4th round pick for this guy.
Yeah, and let's not forget that they still have to figure out whether or not they're going to sign him long term.
Right, exactly.
So this is what happens when you panic. Let's look. I mean, you look at the Rams. Really good, solid team. For the most part, they're still pretty young, but they've gotten a lot of players that they didn't draft. Right. A lot of key players that they didn't draft. Brandon Cooks they got from New England through New Orleans.
Right.
You've got they drafted Aaron Donald and they drafted Jared Goff. Those are their 2 big money contracts. They just poured a whole bunch of money into. Okay.
Right.
They've got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. They have solid wide receiver core. We think that they're okay at running back. Managing Todd Gurley's reps. Drafting Darrell Henderson. They have Malcolm Brown. We'll kind of see how that works out. But their defense has really struggled. So they bring in Jalen Ramsey, ship off Marcus Peters. We'll see how this works out. The Rams now won't have a first-round pick, and I want to say it's 2017 through 2021.
Right.
So that's 5 straight years without a first-round pick. With a team that is going to have to deal with bloated contracts of Aaron Donald and Jared Goff, they've got to now their scouting system really needs to work for picking 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds, unless they start trading some of these guys away.
Yeah, well, not only that, when you think about it, okay, they're in Hollywood. They're looking to follow in the footsteps of some of their other teams where we're looking for the old big star power. And even if we have to give up a top pick to do it, that's exactly what they're doing. But what do you think about L.A.? I mean, aren't they looking to get marquee type of players, and even if it means a first-round pick? But the thing about it is, you know what? If your scouting department's any good, a lot of first-rounders don't hit anyways, so you better hope and pray that your scouting department, like you say, is as good so that you hit on those picks from 2 through 7 and hope that at least, what do you think the average, when you draft 7, 8, 9 guys, I would always think that you're a good draft class, you're able to hold on to 4 or 5 of them. Because you don't know what you're going to get.
I remember, what was it, in 2014, after the Seahawks won the Super Bowl after the 2013 season, the draft in 2014, they drafted, I want to say, 10 guys and kept one, maybe two.
Right, but then
because that whole team was young and stacked.
Right.
Usually, yeah, you're looking at, out of a draft of 6 to 7 guys, they're probably holding on. Out of 7 guys, you're probably holding on to 3.
Right.
And so it's, usually if you draft a third rounder, third rounders and up, if they're not at least on the bench, it's usually because of an injury that they're not involved with the team.
Well, not lose sight of the fact you can always find some good undrafted free agents who probably turn out just as good, if not better, than the guys that are drafted.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's not like there's an exact science of the whole thing, but the reality of the situation, you can find good players anywhere. So, anything else you want to add before we pick this bad boy up tomorrow, Ryan?
There is one, actually 2 more things I want to add. One is I want to start off this is the time that I was again talking about looking towards the rest of the season in fantasy football, and one of the guys that I think that people should start looking to and buying low on is David Montgomery, the running back out of Chicago.
Okay.
Now, I understand that the beginning of the season has not been great. He started off with splitting a lot of carries. I mean, week 1, they gave a ton of carries to Mike Davis. Week 2, they were not only giving carries to Mike Davis, they were giving carries to Cordell Patterson, for crying out loud.
Right.
And in recent weeks, they've given more and more, put more and more on the plate of David Montgomery. I think that he can be set for a second half breakout, because if you look at the rest of his schedule, he has New Orleans this week. Not a great matchup. New Orleans has given up the 28th, basically the 5th fewest amount of points to running backs in terms of fantasy. Week 7. So week 8, he has the Chargers, who give up the 9th most fantasy points to running backs. Then he has Philadelphia, who gives up the 4th least. After that, he has Detroit, the Rams, the Giants, the Lions, the Cowboys, the Packers, and the Chiefs. All of those, those last 7 games, those last 7 weeks of the fantasy season, including the playoffs, none of those teams are all those teams are in the bottom 12 in terms of giving up fantasy points to the running back. These are teams that struggle giving up touchdowns in the red zone, especially on short carries. And which is really where he's been used a lot, is especially in the short downs, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, they've used him a lot there. But he does have the ability to break up those big runs as well. And so I think coming into the rest of the season, things are going to open up a little bit more for David Montgomery. And I think he could be a huge second half add. So if you know someone in your league that has him, that hasn't been starting him, he is a guy that I think that you could get pretty cheap in a trade, or it's possible that he may have even been dropped. So definitely something to look at there. I want to say, well, he's still 92% owned in terms of Yahoo. He's only been dropped about 1% of leagues. So, but he is a guy that I think that if you know someone who doesn't necessarily look that far ahead and plan that far ahead, he is a guy that you could look at as a buy low candidate to set you up for the rest of the season. The other thing I really wanted to mention real quick is for my own podcast at SkolkingFootball.com. Tonight I'm actually recording my 250th episode. So
wow, no kidding! Congratulations.
We weren't able to really do anything special. We're just announcing that it's number 250 for this year. And maybe next year we'll try to plan out something and do something for our 300th episode. So
sounds good. Well, you know what? Just because you said 250, you get to mention it tomorrow night, and you can reiterate that to a different audience that'll be listening otherwise tonight. But meanwhile, Ryan Skolrud, once again, he had another great piece of information for all of our listeners out there here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. And one thing I should be thankful to say is our show has already come on the iHeartRadio distribution network as well. So we're really proud of that, and very proud of where we're going to be headed, Ryan. So really happy what we're going to do, but we have a lot more work ahead of us. So on behalf of Ryan Skolrud, my name is Scott Morganroth. Hope you enjoyed tonight's edition of Fantasy Football, and Ryan will be back on the